Hi, I'm Eileen Chevalier, and today I'm going to show you the books that we use in Eileen Chevalier's typewriter alphabet flashcards botany lessons. When you use the curriculum itself, so this is sort of like the backbone of the curriculum, there are lesson guides. They have different sections on them. So the first section is just a quick intro, and then the first part of the lesson is read. So this is the part that we're going to talk about in this lesson. And I'm going to show you all the books that we use over the entire 36 lessons. The first thing that we use, and that we use in every lesson, are the flashcards. This is the title page, and then there are 36 cards. So there are every letter of the alphabet. Oh, it's lopsided. And each card has facts on the back. And those are what each lesson is based on. Amazingly, there are 36 cards and 36 lessons, but it's not like the first lesson is A. It is A. It goes A, B, J, just to throw you off. So sometimes topics will get combined, and then sometimes we need to spend a little bit longer. So when we do talk about monocots, eudicots, and magnoliidae, there's one lesson where we talk about all of them together, and then we break them up and they each get their own lesson. We also talk about the basal angiosperms, which aren't included in any of those in the first lesson. So the numbers, same thing. They each have a topic that they cover. So this is nectaries, and the 0 is the very last card because it does not have a topic. Nothing was highlighted on the 0 card. So on the back of the 0 card, there's an index for you. So it lists every card and the topic for that card. So that's how the flashcards work. Hopefully you already have them, but if not, they're out there and available for you. I'll put links to these and the other books below. They'll all be affiliate links. So thanks if you use those links, or you can find them on your own. Either way. All right, the first 3 books that I'm going to show you are, if you're only going to get a few books to add to your curriculum, these are the ones I would suggest. And the way that I use the books in the lessons is that if we have a specific question that we're using a book for, then I'll use the book to help us answer that question. So theoretically, you could not have any of these books, but I highly recommend it, especially these first 3, because they have so many diagrams and so much information that you just want to have it in your hand when you're doing those lessons. So the first one is most broad. It is the DK Ultimate Visual Dictionary. And I'm going to give you a little word about DK. I love them. They're maybe my favorite publisher. I love Usborne as well, but DK just, man, they've got the nonfiction stuff down. However, they're a huge company and they have a lot of books and they're all amazing. But even within DK, the reason I chose the DK stuff is because I loved the way it looked. It's very visual, and I loved the almost consistentness of it. So there are a lot of discrepancies in the way that people talk about the classification system now. So I have chosen the way that DK uses the classification system and talks about plants. So it's fairly consistent. There are a few inconsistencies. So for instance, in the visual dictionary, it does not talk about the differences between eudicots and dicots. So you can see that when they talk about it, they say monocotyledonii, and they just use the S, the English ending, and dicotyledons. So I use eudicotyledons because that is what is in the book that I'm going to show you next. But this book is so invaluable, I think, because you'll use it all the time for not just plants. It has so much more than plants. So it starts off with space and planets, and it goes in a little bit different order than the other book. And dinosaurs kind of works its way up. And then a lot of kids love dinosaurs. So if your kids are still in that stage, might encourage them to look a little deeper. Not that you should grow out of loving dinosaurs. You can love them forever. And then the plant ones are just phenomenal. So plants are really cool. So in this book, they show you pretty much everything. So like the planets, obviously, they're not actually showing you inside the planets. Those are just drawings of planets. They have pictures of, that have been taken with telescopes, but not up close like these that we can see. You can actually cut these plants, and they have actual micrographs. So these were sections of flowers that were cut and put under a microscope. So the amount that you can see is just incredible. And they do lots of comparisons. So here they'll do also just regular drawings for you that are simplified, so you can kind of understand what's happening in the plants a little better. And they'll mix those up. So they'll have a page and it'll have some drawings and some pictures. But see, when they can, they'll show you. So it's actual blown up plant parts that are clearly labeled. It's amazing. So I love this book and I use it a lot, but it also has animals and it shows, this is, I don't know if you can do that. This is like all the parts. They're sort of showing you inside of the animals, which is really cool. Not a lot of books will do all of that for so many things. So human body, all these body parts, and they just explain and they show you all the parts. It's amazing. They cover many, many topics. So you've got, weather and geology, light, electricity, and then mechanics, how things work. There's some motorcycles and pulleys and planes. It's amazing. You will use this book so much. So this one's wonderful for this curriculum and beyond. It's just like a wonderful reference book for everything. The next one's a little more specific. So this one is the D.K. Smithsonian Natural History, the ultimate visual guide to everything on Earth, which is a lie because it's not everything on Earth. That's the ultimate visual dictionary. This one is all natural material. So nothing in here is man-made. It starts again really broad. And I love this one because it talks about the classification system itself. So the whole thing in here, everything is classified. So they show you down to the genus and species of all the plants and animals that they show, and fungi. So here is a little timeline of the development of the classification system, which is really fantastic. Oh, at the bottom. Which is really fantastic just for understanding how that developed and how it works and how it's still changing. They give you a bunch of rocks and minerals, and then they start getting into plants. And this is fantastic. So if you were to walk outside and catalog all the monocots and eudicots and magnoliidae and basil angiosperms that are around you, you can go to arboretums and you're not going to see them all. And so to be able, this doesn't include every single thing either, but it gives you a really broad range of plants that are growing all over the world that are monocots. So you're like, okay, in general, these are the things that are similar amongst monocots no matter where they're living. And it just is a much broader picture, which I love, but it's compact. So you're seeing many different families and groups on the same page. And then they go into everything else. So fungi and animals and plants are coming up. I'm not sure. I can't really see everything that's going on down there. Incredible. So this book I've used countless times with my kids over the years. We started using it in kindergarten and we still use it in high school. So highly recommend it. And we definitely use it. There aren't, a lot of those sections and like the ones that you'll see in this book. So this is the Smithsonian, GK Smithsonian Flora inside the Secret World of Plants. And so it was done with the Kew Gardens. And the pictures are amazing. And the explanations of things, like they have this whole 2-page spread of flower shapes. So they'll show you all the different kinds of flowers and why they're called that. And they have the picture and then the little, I don't know if you can see this, a little simplified drawing of why it is that, which I love. It's fantastic. And they do that with the leaves and the arrangement of flowers on stems. This is a really great page. Again, if you're not going to get this book, this is a page that is really fantastic. It's called Fruit Anatomy, and we talk about it in one of the lessons, but it shows you succulent fruits and dry fruits, which surprisingly for many people is a strawberry is thrown in there because it's a dry fruit. It's not a succulent fruit, and it's certainly not a berry. But we talk about that in the lesson. So this book is amazing. And even above, I think, the natural history book for this class, I would definitely recommend getting the Flora book just because of the details and the pictures that you're able to see and the micrographs. I should have found this ahead of time, but there are some really incredible micrographs that are huge and blown up. And we talk about those and how the structure of roots and stems is different in different types of plants. And look at this. We don't talk about this in the lesson, in any of the lessons, but it's amazing. These are pollen grains. So they're like super blown up. So you can see all the different types of pollen grains. Obviously not all the different types, but a good amount of the different types of pollen grains. So those are the ones that I most love. And then there are a bunch of other ones that are really great. So I'll start with the next one that's the most broad. This is the Usborne Illustrated Dictionary of Biology. I first got this book from my mom's. It was a discard from my mom's library. She's a librarian for many, many years, which is why I love books. And the original one, we just used it so much. It was fun. Well, it was a discard, so it had already been used a bunch. And then we used it more, and it was totally falling apart. So I got the newer version, and it's really nice. It has a great cover. So hopefully this will last for many, many more years. And it's biology, so it covers tons of material. So you have cells and how they reproduce. You have all the specifics of the human body, animals, and of course plants. So plants are up here in the front. And I don't use this in a ton of lessons just because I use the Ultimate Visual Dictionary and the Flora book a lot more than this one. But if you're looking for something that's really broad and super accessible, then this is a great one to get. And you can get this book as it's like a 3-part book. So this is the Usborne Illustrated Dictionary of Biology, but they also have physics and chemistry, and I think, and math, they have other ones. But I think those 3 science ones, they put all together if you wanted to buy it as a reference book that way as well. It's in my top 5 books, favorite books of all time. It's so incredible. Grow Your Soil by Diane Messler. Diane, I'm so sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. There's an IE, so could be Meisler, could be Meisler, could be Messler. But thank you for writing the book, Diane. It's amazing. And everyone in the entire world should read your book because it can change the world. It's actually that amazing and wonderful. So we only talk about it in a couple different lessons, but if you care about life at all, you should read the book because it talks about soil and what it is that actually makes plants grow and be healthy and helps those plants to nourish us when we eat them, or it helps the plants to nourish animals that you're then eating. So it's sort of the basis of all of our life and existence, so you should get it. It says, the subtitle is Harness the Power of the Soil Food Web to Create the Best Garden Ever, but really it could be like the best world and life ever. So she doesn't focus as much on the plants as she does on the soil that's growing the plants and why that's really necessary and important in growing anything. One other book this one's a little bit for older kids or adults. It's super fun. I don't know that it would be for younger kids just because you don't want kids to be terrified of plants. So once I started reading it, I was like, oh. If I didn't already love going outside, I might be totally afraid. Now, it's called Wicked Plants, the Weed That Killed Lincoln's Mother and Other Botanical Atrocities. But it's fascinating. So this book, it's really a bunch of stories about plants and how people use or abuse them or mistakenly use them when they think it's something else. Anyway, it's fascinating. So you get like some history and some psychology in there and just some really fun stories. So intoxicating, destructive, painful. She has like these little titles, illegal. Anyway, you can approach it in a bunch of different ways. And so she'll talk more specifically about one plant. And then at the end of each section, she has a bunch of smaller little blurbs about plants that sort of fit into that same category. So that one's really fun. And then there are a bunch of children's books. And I say children's books knowing that we are all children and forever until we die, we can enjoy picture books. So illustrations are the best. That's why I have chosen the DK books and the visual dictionary. I love the visuals. For me, that's really important. I didn't understand that I was dyslexic until a lot later in life, well, very recently, when I was having trouble teaching my son to read because he's also dyslexic. And then I was like, oh, that's why I always love picture books. Because I learn visually, and I don't know if I learn visually because I'm dyslexic or if that's something that I would have loved anyway. You don't have to be dyslexic to learn visually, but these books are really great. This is Karl, Get Out of the Garden. It talks about Karl Linnaeus growing up and deciding to work with the classification system. And I love books that tell the story of kids who are, you know, we all have to overcome challenges. So it talks about his challenges that he had to overcome. And I believe he was kicked out of one school because he wasn't cutting it. Classic. Went on to become super famous and do something that affected us all, even though, according to his school at the time and some teachers who wanted him to do things a certain way, he wasn't really ready or there yet. But we can all do amazing things. So that's just kind of inspiring, and it helps to demystify the classification system. He named plants after people he liked, if they were beautiful, and people he didn't like, if they were like stinky or ugly plants. So he's a human. It completely demystifies the classification system. And I think just makes science more fun and engaging and feels like, hey, I too can participate and be a scientist. So along the same lines is the Gregory Mendel book. It talks about his life from a kid. And then I'll show you some of these pictures just because they're so beautiful. And how he progressed as he grew up. And then it goes, and not only does it talk about how he worked with genetics, it gives some really great pictures of those and explains a little bit more how the genetics works. So it's a story about him, but it also helps to explain scientifically what he was finding out and how that works. This page is really great for that. I use this in one of the lessons. So anyway, another really fantastic picture book. And then Flowers Are Calling. Flowers Are Calling is great because so it's talking about pollinators and all different kinds of pollinators. It doesn't just talk about bees. Obviously there's a hummingbird and a butterfly, and there's some bats in there. So flowers, we all know that we as humans, there are floral shops everywhere. Grocery stores have flowers in them. We as humans really love flowers, but really it points to, like in nature, flowers do call to us, but they're also calling to all of these animals and the systems that are happening there. So we use this when we start talking about pollinators. So there's some of the really beautiful pictures in there. And And the last one that I have so far is Acetus sleepy. And this one is really great because it just talks about seeds and all the different parts of them and how they work. So it starts obviously with Acetus sleepy. There aren't any page numbers in this book. So when I refer to it, I'll just refer to the heading. So it's a little trickier to find, but it's not super long, so you can find them. And the illustrations are absolutely beautiful in here. There are all these different topics and lots of different drawings of different plants, which is wonderful. And the ones about the seed and the germination, that's where we're looking at it a lot more. So that book is fantastic. If you can't buy them, or your library at home isn't big enough or ready enough for this, then you can check those out at the library as well. Hopefully they're all at your public library. If not, you should tell them to get them because they're great. It's very difficult. Like when I started looking at our local library for books on botany, it was really, really difficult for me because I had already done so much research for the curriculum that I made for the flashcards, that I would see these books that if I hadn't known what was really true, they say that a strawberry is a berry, but a strawberry isn't a berry. I mean, we call it a berry and that is a name that we have for it, but technically the way that the fruit develops is completely different for a strawberry than for a blueberry. So scientifically, that's not an accurate thing to say. So it's hard for me to find books that are specific about botany that are really correct. So like even in Acetus sleepy, which I absolutely love, there's a drawing that is a little bit misleading just because it's such a simplified drawing. So I note that in the curriculum, but I would encourage you as you go to the children's section of your library just to be very, very cautious because there are a lot of errors in the children's books. Anyway, it's a kind of a big deal. It makes me a little bit heartbroken because we grow up thinking all these things that aren't true and they're just really basic information. Anyway, very last book, not really a good book, is 100 Edible and Healing Flowers. So I chose this book because there are a bunch of different books that talk about edible flowers, but this one I chose just because she does such an amazingly thorough job of talking about a plant and then giving you lots of recipes for lots of different things. Like there are a lot that do, like you can get like a dessert books with flowers or teas with flowers, but she just, borage fritters, so that won. This book won because there's just so many recipes and they cover such a wide array of things. And the most astounding thing about this book for me was that I, obviously writing all these lessons and started cataloging with my cards. I'm like, okay, which of these flowers that I drew are edible flowers and which of these flowers are poisonous, and then which of them are just, you don't eat them, but they're not going to kill you. And I was like categorizing all on my own. And then when I read the 100 Edible and Healing Flowers book, flowers that I had labeled as poisonous, she uses and she eats them. So just like cashews, for instance, will kill you if you don't cook them correctly, if they're not prepared correctly. So there are a lot of plants that are like that. So if you prepare them correctly, you can eat them, or if you prepare them correctly, you can ingest them in certain ways in certain amounts and they can heal you. Or if you ingest them in a different amount, they do the opposite and kill you. So plants are really fascinating that way. Anyway, I loved it because it was challenging for me because I was like, oh, that was on my poisonous list, but yucca is like totally edible. Anyway, sources are really difficult. There's a lot of misinformation, so like sorting through all that has been really difficult, but I wish you well on your journey of finding books that you love, and I would really love it and appreciate it if you found, especially kids' books, because I've had such a hard time finding ones that are accurate. If you want to send me your suggestions, I would love it, and I will try to find those books and see if I can add them to the curriculum. So thanks so much for watching this, and hopefully we'll see you in all the lessons. Thanks, guys. Bye.